Okay, welcome everyone to the April 21st edition of the Gateway API Working Group, or Gateway API meeting, I suppose I should just say. This is an official CNCF meeting, so everybody should adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct, which pretty much boils down to be nice. Um, with that said, I'm gonna post the agenda once again in case there's anybody who showed up after I posted it the first time. The agenda is open, meaning if there's anything that you would particularly want to talk about that's not already listed, feel free to add it. Please also add yourself and your affiliation to the list of attendees. We would appreciate that. Uh, I have stolen the first slot on the agenda to talk about the next release. This will be very quick. The next release is currently slated for the end of June. It is currently almost the end of April. If you go through and you look at the various timeline docs that have been posted elsewhere, you will realize that there ain't much time to get stuff in for the next release. So now would be a lovely time to go and write provisional caps and line people up for experimental work and all of that. Um, Shortly after this meeting, I'm hoping this week, we will also have a board that we will use for tracking and as a nice convenient place to keep all the dates in one place. Assuming there are no questions about that, anybody? All right. Oh yeah, and the current plan is that Becca and I will be staying on as the release managers for this release, which we are assuming will be 1.6 because we are assuming it will have features. Um, yeah. And next up would be Grant talking about session persistence, our very favorite topic.
Excellent. Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up really quickly. So session persistence is a potential candidate for the 1.6 release. And my question was, we
For
don't
standard,
have,
you mean, right?
sorry, yeah, for standard, for
Okay.
1.6 for standard. We're going from experimental to standard. And we have been in experimental for quite a while. I think we've broken probably the record for the longest experimental API.
Sadly,
But
you have definitely not because of GEP 713, but
okay.
I would I think you may be the record holder for a reasonably healthy time in experimental. So congratulations.
Well, thank you, thank you. So my question here is, we're medium confidence targeting 1.6 to standard. Um, we're working on conformance tests right now. Hopefully, we'll have some. I think Saloni, I think you're on. We'll have some here the next week or two, I think. Is there a minimum soak time? Like once we release those performance tests, I think we want to have enough time to get signal from the experimental APIs from the implementations that have done experimental. It just felt like the timeline's a little tight because June is the I think the cutoff for or is like what mid-June for 1.6. So is there like a guideline on like how much time we need in an experimental with conformance tests to get good signal from implementations?
There is not, other than you have to have the wow, I cannot talk. Sorry. The guideline is that you have to have enough implementations passing conformance. The expectation is that if you have implementations that pass conformance, they will hopefully find issues with the conformance tests and with the standard. And so enough time to get three implementations passing is considered enough. Um, I put an answer into the doc before realizing that you were specifically talking about conformance rather than being an experimental at all. So I will edit that to match what I just said. Uh, Anybody else have any thoughts or other memories there? Mike gave me a thumbs up, so I gather that he agrees with me.
Yeah, I don't think we've revised guidance to have any specific time frame after we moved away from like the experimental for one release when we had it on the same cadence as standard.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, do you already have because your conformance tests went in a little while ago, right? Do you already have implementations passing? Or am I conflating session persistence with something else?
You might be complaining it. We don't have conformance tests yet.
Okay. Then I would encourage you to have conformance tests as soon as you can.
Yep. Okay.
Also,
Uh,
yeah, sorry, anything else on that front?
Yeah, I think it's just then it's a PSA that the timeline's a little tight because being an experimental without conformance test is a little different than being an experimental with conformance test. So even though we have that 6 months, I feel like maybe the confidence is a little bit lower just because I do think we might need some more time to get that signal from implementations.
Yeah,
So then that's more of a PSA than
yeah.
anything. So we'll work on
Okay,
the conformance test.
cool.
Yeah,
I
I
should
think that's
point out
reasonable, especially with
also
some like
that,
the changes that we're doing there potentially, and kind of fuzziness around like, do we want to move forward with what's there currently versus tweaking things?
yeah, I was
Yeah.
also going to say that one of the other things that we would kind of like to see with experimental stuff would be to, you don't have to wait until the end of the experimental phase to start writing conformance tests either, right? Um, Candace has a hands up, and Candace also made a good comment in the chat that if you're hunting for write access to the agenda doc, you need to join the SIG Network mailing list. Thank you, Candace.
Sure, no problem. Um, I was so happy when I found out that's how to do it. So I just wanted to point out that Grant's the session persistence feature is actually called backend traffic policy. I'm hearing an echo. Are you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
who is
who is
somebody is not
somebody is
muted
not
and
muted and
has
has
no
no
headset.
headset.
Stephen, can you mute maybe?
I have muted Stephen.
Okay.
I have all the power. No, sorry. Um, sorry, Stephen. I'm happy to let you talk. Um, I'm sorry, Candace, you were saying session persistence is part of backend traffic policy. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, backend traffic policy. So just in case people, you know, weren't so interested in session persistence, but they may be more interested in what happens with backend traffic policy and its future. Just want to put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, Wabing.
Hey, Flynn. Nice to meet you again. So,
Been a while.
I noticed that we also have session persistence in the HTTP raw rule.
Yes, it's in two places.
So,
That was one of the things that we want to kind of investigate and kind of clarify in terms of if, do we have use cases for both of them, or does like one make more sense than the other?
I just have right now we're just using the session persistence in the HTTP raw rule. So we got this so cookie path issue. I saw you already responding in that issue. Thanks for your response. And so I'm wondering, is it possible to include that, like configuration for the cookie path in the next release? I mean, when we promote the session persistent to the standard channel.
Sorry, I'm not sure I followed that correctly. Are you asking if it'll go standard both as backend traffic policy and in an HTTP route rule?
Oh, sorry for my poor English. I mean,
Uh,
I got a problem. I got an issue. Like we want to set the path for the cookie using the session persistence, and
I'm gonna
I
have to
wonder
defer.
if we can
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
solve that before we make it to standard. Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna have to defer that question to people who've been working on session persistence more than I have. But I will note that that sounds like an additive change, which is to say it sounds like a change that we probably could add later, even if it's not standard in 1.6. But I will defer to Grant as to whether that is true or whether I am wrong.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, Hopping. I think we do need to add it at some point. I think the question whether it's a table stakes feature whether it's necessary for, I guess, the vast majority of implementations to do in that first push to standard. And it kind of brings up another topic of, I've actually been downsizing. I've been putting up some PRs to downsize the session persistence API for things that are not as well utilized, basically doing some feelers on implementations, just because when we go to standard, it's really, really hard, if not impossible, to undo something, right? It's
Yeah.
really easy to do that in experimental. So now I'm taking a hard look and pulling out things that are maybe don't have the justification that they should have. I think path is a solid one, so we can have that conversation. Maybe it's table stakes. It does feel additive, so it does feel like something that would just help us slim down the API to get session persistence to standard with the default value of path, and then later add a gap to add it as a post standard feature. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, but I'm open to comments. Like if you guys really think it's a table stakes feature, I'm happy to look into it more.
I already saw your PR, and you mentioned that we should have like I think a distinct name for each cookie, so that will solve the path problem, I guess. So I think defaulting the cookie path to the root path should solve my problem. Yeah, and we can add a path maybe later configuration for specific path later after standard.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's take it up in the issue, and if you guys have more comments about the default path, let's discuss there, and we can make some changes for standard.
Sure. So they apply like we want to change the default to the root path if everyone agree with that before the standard, so we can have some time to maybe for experimental like before it be promoted to standard, so we can get more feedback, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of circles back to my first comment of like, we're actively tweaking some things, and it would probably be good to have some conformance tests to have some soak time to get that signal. So that's why my confidence and such persistence is it's a good thing, but it's kind of dropping a bit for standard. I would probably put it at a low, just because we're actively revising things. So yeah, this is all kind of coming full circle now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Having conformance tests definitely sounds like a great idea sooner than later. Candace asked in chat, did I misunderstand what Mike was saying about session persistence being available in both backend traffic policy and HTTP route rules? Or did I get that correct?
It is in both.
Okay.
However, I think we will have to explore maybe graduating them independently, because there's still some discussion whether it needs to be in both, and we might be more successful if we just graduate HTTP route, because if you doing both at one time can get really complicated too. So that also there's a discussion as well on GitHub about whether we should do both. So I can link to that.
Is that the one that Mike just linked to? Issue 4268.
Looks like there's two, actually.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Candace. All right. Anything else for session persistence? Okay. regex in gateway API. Stephen, I owe you an apology because I said I was going to comment on your regex syntax gep yesterday, and then I completely failed to do so. So I will do that today. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I think we're circling in on consensus. My computer's messed up, so I'm on my phone. So I think finding kind of common denominator rejects for everything is definitely possible. I want to be somewhat thorough with the edge cases, even though I think you'd be doing some really crazy things to hit those edge cases. But that's why they're called edge cases, right?
Also, I mean, really crazy things almost defines regular expressions. So
Yeah. And I think the main point Nick or was saying that we should be explicit about is, well, I think there are 2 points. One is API validation, which I don't think we should do at all, just because it's not clear how you would validate whether a regex is indeed valid, given the tools we have at the API level.
I think it is literally impossible.
Yeah, I think it's like theoretically impossible, right? So I think we should just kick that down to the implementations and then the parent objects, which should have like very specific failure modes of, in case a regex is not valid for whatever reason, this is how you should fail. I think the other question that Nick wanted me to be more specific about was, I think we're going to have a bunch of like pattern or regex fields across Gateway API, and we should be very clear that all these fields should conform to this GEP, but implementations are allowed to add their own features and semantics and syntax on top of it. So for example, maybe if you're using a PCRE regex engine, you can do back referencing in your regular expression, thereby making them not actually regular expressions, but that's kind of besides the point. Or if you're using RE2, you can have like case insensitivity flags or things like named capture groups, right? And I think a bit of a sticking point there for me is that it's not clear when you go from the gateway API regular expression that is portable across implementations to something that's more implementation specific. But I think that's a trade-off
I mean,
I'm willing to take because
I think you just said it, right? Like if you have a regex field that includes back references, then by definition, you have just wandered out into implementation specific territory. And we would
sure, but I
strongly
think the
encourage
worry
anybody
here is
not to
that
do that if they care about portability.
yeah, but I think a lot of the worry here is that it's sometimes not super clear whether you're walking out of it or not. Like \d, oftentimes that'll reference a digit, right?
Yeah.
Like right now in this GEP, that's not defined. There are other cases of like square brackets inside square brackets. How should those act? But I think that's the kind of main worry where, it'd be nice if, we had an explicit mechanism for people stepping outside of something portable. But yeah, I think that's just a trade-off that I'm somewhat happy to take. And I will say that the other thing is that if we do it like we do, where you have like one field that has at least these semantics and nothing more, it actually fits in really well with our current regular expression path matching, where we could probably change that to say, rather than being completely implementation specific, we can say that the regex semantics will match gateway API regex and whatnot. And it's also just a complete upgrade over what we have, right? Because now at least we have something that we can performance test.
Yeah, that's the most important thing to me. The other point I suppose we could make is that the conformance tests would presumably not contain any \ds or any bracket stuff. So we can have meaningful conformance tests without getting into how do you deal with some of that extended stuff. At the same time, I kind of hate the fact that I don't think any of the regex engines can tell you whether you're using features like that. And it would be lovely if they could.
Yeah, it's fairly tough. I think best case scenario, we make our own function that tells you whether it is or it isn't.
Hmm.
But then we have to make our own function that tells you whether it is or it isn't, and then
Yeah.
and then the moment a control plane isn't written in Go, then it's just a sad day for us.
Any such function like that would need to cover at least Go and Rust, and
Mhm,
which, I mean, there's some precedents for that, right?
mhm.
2257 required implementations for Go and Python and Rust, and it wasn't that
Both
hard.
2250s.
2257 was the duration format, Gep.
Oh, okay, but that seems a lot simpler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ironically, it is actually defined in terms of a regex. So, yeah.
Yes, but yeah.
Okay. Anything else on regexes? I agree. It does feel like we're circling in on consensus here, and I'm very happy to see that.
Mhm.
Okay. Huabing, I would say you should move that yourself. But yeah.
Yeah, I will say that
Sorry.
defining a standardized regex for all of Gateway API, I think the main point here is that we have something that we can conformance test.
Yeah.
And then the UX
Yeah.
is unfortunately a little secondary.
Sad but true.
Mhm.
Okay. Norwin.
Yeah, this one is more a heads up. We kind of buried out the old topic. So we are start making the listener protocols ready for kind of supporting lowercase as well as mixed case protocols so that we kind of treating the field case insensitive. There's also a plan to add some conformance test for it. So if you're an implementation and you handle the listener protocols case sensitive, probably the either to speak up and add to those issues and pull request your comment that you're not in favor of handling those things case insensitive, or building out supporting it in a case insensitive way. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
the Mike? Go ahead, Mike.
I remember dealing with this issue like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, whatever. And we had consensus that we should at least support the lowercase values, and we just never made the change. I think Nick and Shane at the time were supportive of that. And it seems like there's prior art in Kubernetes app protocol for supporting lowercase values. Mixed case, like HTTP, is
I mean, if you're gonna do lowercase,
lowercase is fine. Mixed is
you may as,
weird,
but
but whatever.
yeah, the flip. I mean, it comes down to normalize case before comparing, and so yeah, whatever.
Yeah, if I want to write gRPC with a lowercase g, then sure.
Right. Just for the love of, you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to get into that.
What, UTF-8 equivalents? Is that what you're gonna say?
So I think UTF-8 is explicitly disallowed there. Thank God for, thank everything holy. Um, but no, I was remembering a case where we had to worry about not just dealing with mixed case, but preserving it when round tripping to a client in HTTP, and it was awful. Supporting it in the sense of, allowing it in these resources and then upcasing before doing comparisons, I think is both sane and not difficult to do. So I would support that. Okay. Anything else on that one?
You can tag me to LGTM by the shoot too. Completely stolen.
I shall let Norwin do the tagging there. Next item is from Michael about IP access control. I guess we will defer that one until hopefully Michael joins a little bit later. And then next up is Julia.
Yes, that's me. Hi, everybody.
I feel
I'm
like there was
Yulia.
already some I feel like there was already some activity on that that boils down to, oh yeah, this looks good, but am I misremembering?
I can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know because I'm here for the first time. So at the
I
meeting, I
gotcha.
mean. Okay, but yeah, I saw some comments in the PR, so just feel free to review it. I try to do it as close as possible to the original version. Yeah, and it's my second PR. The first was about Google Analytics. So I just wanted to introduce myself and say thank you to Becca for bringing me
Yeah.
to the community. That's it.
Woohoo! Um, I will take another look at this. I glanced at it really quickly and I thought it looked pretty good. Um, and I'm generally a big fan of making things simpler. Um, cool. So yeah, thank you for taking that on. We appreciate it. And anybody who's interested in docs, that would be a fine PR to take a look at. Anybody who's not interested in docs, you should become interested in docs. They're important. Um, all right. Huabing. Actually, hang on a second. Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that Michael hadn't shown up when I wasn't watching. Huabing, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Flynn. So,
Thank you.
yeah, it's like a long time issue and raised a long time ago. And to really I want to revisit it. So for the backend tiers policy, subject alternative lane matching topic. So originally I proposed like a more flexible matching, like maybe prefix matching or regis matching, because we have a use case like it's more like a match use case. So we use only gateway in front of the match or the integrated gateway, and we have a lot of services in the match, and each with different speed identity. So it's a lot of like operational overhead to manage this identity because we need to add every identity into the backtesting policy for the validation. Um, but based on the feedback, looks like it's probably not really right direction because the RFC standard said, well, okay, we should use like exact match for speed for SN URL matching. So we got another use case from the community. The only get a community like they are right now using some legacy certificate where there is no SN at all, just common land. But this should be valid. Be valid. I mean, this cert should be valid because they are signed by like trusted CA. And thirdly, because we don't we the SN validation is mandatory, so this cert just failed validation. So I'm thinking maybe we can just have a option like we skip SN validation, just validate the cert with the CA. So that's my proposal, and I saw like Nick already responded in the issue, and I think he basically maybe already agree with this approach, but still have some concern with the security. So
Hmm.
I'd like to bring this up to the meeting to get more feedback from the community and the maintainer. Yeah, does it make sense?
Excuse me. Um, First off, let me make sure I'm capturing this correctly.
So you can open the issue and maybe.
I just realized that I have cleverly forgotten to share the agenda on here, and that if I do that, that might make things easier for other folks. So let me do that. All right. I mean, everybody can also watch the typing along on their own screen, but still, this is, I think, slightly more polite. Yes, Candace.
Could I summarize the ask here? Is it
Yes,
just
please.
a matter? Is it just a matter of okay, so it's supporting regex match patterns for the URI type SAN?
Yeah, that's my first ask, but I get some pushback because people think this may be not the right approach, and we should use exact matching for the SN. And if you take a look at this issue later, I propose another approach. Maybe we can have an option to just skip the SN validation, just validate the cert, use the CA cert.
So
Yeah.
first off, if you have an issue for this already, can you drop it? Can you drop a link in this doc?
Sure.
And second, you're talking about validating the SAN, not the SNI itself, right? Sorry, you're talking about, yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make sure I was hearing that correctly. Zoom eats vowels.
Yes, he did drop the link in chat and I hadn't seen it.
Oh, nor have I. Thank you.
Do you get the link?
Twice is enough. Once should be enough.
Really. There we go. Okay. The second one about validating a cert that doesn't have a SAN at all feels like a thing we should definitely support. Mostly because I've run across that a couple of times myself. The first one is considerably weirder to me. While I'm thinking about that, Norwin, did you have something that you wanted to add there?
Yeah, so in general, we have a gap that I should push forward. I didn't have the time so far, is about how we want to relax validation on the backend TLS policy in general, and also to have TLS without actually having a valid or without validating the certificate. But I have questions for the SAN validation. So SAN validation on the backend TLS policy is optional. So you're talking about the host name validation that we are doing kind of as a fallback if no SAN validation is specified. That's what you're referring to, or?
Is that a question or a statement?
No, it's a question. So if Haubing is referring to that, or what exactly do you mean by skipping SAN validation or validating certificates without SAN?
Yeah. So we have some we have use case in the ONE gateway. We actually have an issue there. I think already got the issue in the gateway IP issue. So basically, some user have some legacy certificate. They just have command line. We don't have this cert don't have SAN inside it. So you can't validate SAN. That's the reality. So basically, we should have a way to allow this cert because to be used within our gateway because they are issued by some legitimate say, so they should be allowed. So that's.
But the common name is still matching the host name specified in the backend TLS policy. So you still have some sort of matching, or the common name is not even set to the right host name.
They have common land there. Yeah, they sort of have common land, but no sand.
The discussion in that issue, in issue 4528 there, is actually really, really good and really, really worth reading. Um, so I would strongly recommend everybody take a look at that before chiming in on this one. Um, Overall, Huabing, after reading it, I pretty much agree with Nick here that uh, I am also very reluctant to do things that the TLS standard says you should explicitly not do. But I'm okay with supporting something like, you know, insecure skip sand validation or something along those lines. It's yeah, it's a little weird.
Okay, so if people we agree with this approach, what's a like next step? Should I like read a PR to modify the existing gap and then the code?
I think that it makes sense to do a PR to modify the GEP. That's a pretty straightforward way to see what the rest of the community thinks and to see whether people can get behind that.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Could I just ask Flynn, just quickly reading through the
Yeah.
issue, it doesn't seem like it has much support from one of the maintainers.
So, Nick is opposed to regex matches. Sorry, let me phrase that differently. Based on my reading of this issue, I would say that Nick is opposed to supporting regex match for SAN because the TLS RFCs explicitly say that you should not do that. Um, but his last comment is along the lines of I read that as he's probably okay with an escape hatch to turn off SAN validation as long as it is very clearly marked as an insecure thing to do. And that makes sense to me as well.
But I'm
Now,
also wondering if they're not using backend TLS policy, if they have a different use case for backend TLS policy, for which there might be a different approach to this.
So I think the use of the backend TLS policy is the same. They also want to validate the cert of the backend service, but the validation just can't validate the same. That's the only part different.
I
Yeah.
think that yeah, I think it is not unlikely that this kind of thing would end up running into potential later work about off-cluster gateways, for example. And I think it's entirely possible that a modification to the GEP to support disabling SAN validation would be met by people going, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't do this. But I also think that a modification to the GEP feels to me like the most reasonable way to get feedback from the rest of the community. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm open to other suggestions too.
Yeah, it's a lot of work just to get feedback. I mean,
We could point people at the issue and ask them to opine on it. If they're here at the meeting, then they can see the link in the notes. We could open a new GitHub discussion. We can post about it on Slack. I mean, it's it's not clear to me that any of those are going to end up being less work overall than just doing a quick gap where you lay out the use cases. I don't know. Huabing, what do you think? Are you okay with going straight to a gap, or would you rather kick it around on Slack or in a discussion, or
Yeah, I think GAP is the most straightforward way to going this forward because if you put it, I mean, just put some in a Slack, maybe you nobody, I mean,
Yeah.
notice that.
I'm not sure there are any great answers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that opens a security risk or that poses a security risk is going to have to be very carefully managed.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Anything else on that one? I think that I see that Michael has joined and we can get over to Michael.
Hey folks, how you doing today?
Mostly awake yourself.
Surviving, almost there. All right, so thank you for your time. I did start a discussion in the repo because I do think there's a gap in the Gateway API when it comes to CIDR-based IP filtering. So
Mhm.
I'm on the Nginx Gateway Fabric team, and some of my peers are here as well today. But from an Nginx perspective, IP allow listing and deny listing is a pretty generic Nginx use case, as well as being a pretty familiar use case to other implementations as well. So we don't see this as a standardized approach within Gateway API. And I notice other implementations do so via implementation-specific APIs. So the goal really was to see, was there any interest in having a more standardized way to express an IP allow or deny list in Gateway API itself. I think the use case resonates, but I didn't see much pushback or anything. But I do know that there are other policies out there, like network policy, that may not always solve this same problem. So the discussion is more nuanced around like the API shape and the scope of it. So some of the ideas in the discussion were around, keeping the use case and the scope pretty narrow, maybe limiting it to HTTP route level filters to avoid it turning into a full-blown policy. But I think ultimately it's good to start a discussion around the topic because there might be some overlap between network policy, authorization policy, and there's an access policy out there as well.
I actually kind of wish Lior were here because he's the one who was writing the authorization policy gap. Um, Mike, do you want to, you and Lior and I and John were talking about this not too long ago. Do you want to take a crack at summarizing that? Because, sorry, let me let me
I
let
have
me
not read
back
this
that
one,
up.
and I honestly have mostly stayed away from IP-based controls, so I probably don't have the context to comment on this.
So I tend to agree that I don't think you're going to get a lot of pushback on the idea that, oh, hey, CIDR controls would be nice. Um, the the like 3779 is dealing not with IP addresses, it's dealing with other kinds of principles. I don't actually remember about the agentic access policy, whether it talks about IP address or not. Um,
Not currently, as far as I can recall. I've been looking at that last week.
yeah. I tend to agree with John that, building uh, I tend to agree with John that going into something like this without talking to the agentic folks and without talking to, without taking a look at 3779 is likely to be a fascinating sort of thing. Um, hmm.
I will say the intersection with agentic stuff is that the Leroy's existing gap is mostly focused on east-west like service mesh entity cases, whereas
Right.
the agentic folks are caring more about like ingress north-south authorization.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out a reasonable way forward, given that we don't have the the folks who are really active on either of those discussions here right now. I note that never mind. I take that back. The agentic networking thing is on. They have a meeting on Thursday at during this time, and that might actually be a reasonable next step. Would be to bring it up there. Um,
Yeah, we can definitely do
yeah.
that.
I just really want to get Lior involved in this one in particular because I feel like he's the person who is the most. I feel like he's the one who has the most personal overlap with all of these things, and
Agreed.
I'm kind of trying to catch up on some of these myself, but Lior I think is the one who's kind of has the most visibility into all of these simultaneously right this second. So, um, I tend to think that IP-based stuff could augment the existing things rather than conflicting with it. But I also have to point out two biases of mine. One is that I personally tend to think that using network metadata for authentication is not a good idea. And so um, anything we do with IP stuff, I would, excuse me, I would tend to be viewing as sort of a belt and suspenders thing, not a primary thing. Um, and also my bias would be to start with route filters or route elements rather than a capital P policy.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
So
I agree. I think it's an interesting one because even though the use case itself is quite simple, it's a CIDR based allow deny to the back end. I can see how it can overlap with other
yeah,
policies, especially when we start talking about agentic use cases. But I wonder when we talk about agentic, are we focused on egress CIDR endpoints rather than back end?
it's um there's pretty active discussion about egress and east-west and ingress, so
Yeah,
I don't think that's necessarily going to be a blocker there.
cool.
Um, the most entertaining discussions going on with between Agentic and Gateway API around access control have to do with should that be an API that is part of Gateway API, or should that be an API that is an extension of Gateway API from the agentic side of the world? And there are interesting arguments in both directions.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right. Anything else? Going once, going twice. We get to get 7 minutes back. Okay, 6 minutes back now. All right. Thanks, everybody. Much appreciated. Next meeting will be next Monday, if I recall correctly, in the other time slot. Yes, Monday the 27th in the APAC friendly slot, and then 2 weeks from today in this time slot. So, thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Yep.
Thank you.